Slither on into that fear hole, bro, because the finale of Rick and Morty Season 7 is the stuff of nightmares. There's nothing quite like flinging yourself into a bathroom floor crevice at a Denny's, so grab some pancake puppies and say goodbye to Grandpa. Today, I'm breaking down all the details and Easter eggs you might have missed in Fear No Mort. This is your spoiler warning! If you haven't seen Season 7, Episode 10 of Rick and Morty yet, hit pause on this video and come back once you've conquered your deepest fear. The episode title, Fear No Mort, is a parody of the 1961 thriller Fear No More, a movie about a woman who is either the victim of an elaborate murder conspiracy or slowly losing her mind, a fitting parallel to a story about not truly knowing if you're still in a fear hole or not. Rick and Morty are extremely unimpressed by the nightmare carnival they used to love on another planet. Honestly, the way that they walk through that horror maze is exactly my tactic for making it through haunted houses. If you make conversation with the characters, they generally leave you alone for easier prey. A demon in a suit, voiced by Liev Schreiber, approaches the two and asks them if they want to experience real fear. He seems to understand that when you've truly seen all the horrors the infinite universe has to offer, there are only a few unconquered fears left for Rick and Morty to face. And where better to face your fears than the men's bathroom at a Denny's on Earth? The whole demon explains over the course of a short VHS tape that after jumping in, the hole will conjure your biggest fear, feeding off the terror you've released until you're able to conquer that fear and re-emerge in your best dress, fearless. Do Rick and Morty Swifties exist? Because that dumb joke was for you. According to the wall of survivor photos hanging next to the hole, only 3 other people have bested their own nightmares and come out victorious. To be fair, it's totally possible that more people have escaped the hole and were just too traumatized to take a selfie afterwards. But it's still metal as hell that Morty is one of the few who dared to enter. At first, the haunts that try to scare Morty are fairly benign, although he does get his button ripped open and nearly filled with maggots. Personally, I think that this is due to Morty's lingering guilt about splicing open those suicide victims to slurp their spaghetti. After making it back out, Rick and Morty return home where the family is watching Cake or Fake from Episode 7's Wet Kuat Amortwican Summer. But within moments, a version of Rick that managed to save Diane from Rick Prime's bomb blast falls through the ceiling, dying and leaving Diane alone with the Smith-Sanchez family. And that's where things really get interesting. Rick and Morty obviously realize that Rick's dead wife landing in their living room after being told that she was literally wiped from every single version of the multiverse is a huge sign that they're still stuck in the hole. And fascinatingly, Rick calls out Morty's truest, deepest fear almost instantly. He accuses his grandson of being terrified that he'll lose his grandpa to happiness, and that Rick won't need his little buddy anymore now that he has his wife back. Although Morty denies it, it's clear that there's a lot of truth behind Rick's accusation. Morty has been living on the outskirts of his grandpa's acceptance since the moment Rick crash-landed in his family's part of the multiverse. This isn't the first time Morty has questioned his grandpa's love for him. Season 1's Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind dealt with similar feelings after Morty realized that there were infinite copies of him being used and disrespected by their own Ricks after visiting the Citadel. There, Morty learned that he was essentially just a tool to protect Rick, and Rick refuses to admit outright that he loves and respects his grandson. Although he does pay him a compliment at the end by telling him that he's the Mortiest Morty. While the audience knows that our Rick truly does love Morty C-137 beneath his degaff exterior, it makes a lot of sense that Morty isn't always so sure. Rick has spent 7 seasons being kind of a bag of dicks towards his grandson, despite the fact that Morty has risked his life and sanity on countless occasions just to spend time with him. Nearly every time Morty wants to go on his own kind of adventure, Rick finds a way to ridicule him, prove him wrong, and rub his mistakes in his face. And those adventures are hard to come by. We're all familiar with Rick's punch card system, where Morty only gets to choose an adventure after 10 near-death experiences of Rick's design. His adventures, like helping the Vindicators, trying to make suicide spaghetti ethical, or even vying for a selfie with the president, are openly mocked by Rick, especially when they fail. It even turned out that the only time he willingly supported Morty, during his Knights of the Sun escapades, was because he built a robot version of himself to do stupid stuff with his grandson, while he focused on the more serious task of hunting down Rick Prime. And in Season 5, Rick actually does abandon Morty, choosing to live as a weird crow guy instead of putting up with his own family. Rick also said it himself to Summer this season. He views Morty as a dumb dog who will do whatever he asks, and definitely treats him like it too. Morty isn't the only one who's had to question Rick's love. Beth also went through her own crisis of fatherly faith when she found out that her dad made a clone of her and was too drunk and ambivalent to even know which variant is his real daughter. When she, Diane, Rick, and Morty catch up at the ice cream store this episode, she merely says welcome to the family when her mom expresses horror that Rick basically views her as an NPC. Rick just isn't the type of guy to write a gushy Instagram post about his loved ones on their birthdays. Diane's loss desensitized him to the idea of losing his family, and reuniting with Rick Prime's original family only fueled the fact that they are technically all replaceable. Across 7 seasons, Diane is the only person the Smith family is certain that Rick truly loves wholeheartedly, and it's easy to see why. In addition to the fact that he almost drank himself to death and searched every corner of the multiverse to find her over several decades and 7 seasons, their love is palpable when we finally witness their relationship dynamic in this episode. I love the detail that Rick immediately suggested the family go out for ice cream when Diane arrived. He must have thought of the moment he saw her again every single day for over 30 years, and all he wanted to do was follow through on their rudely interrupted dessert plans. Like, if Brett died while we were getting ready to go get buffalo wings, I'd make damn sure he had a piping hot plate of honey habanero when he came back to life. Before Diane's death, Rick really was a super caring husband and father. The writers confirmed during Inside the episode that Rick has always been the kind of guy who would rather go get ice cream with his wife and daughter than invent time travel. Or as he calls it, the Long Island iced tea of science fiction. And in Fear No Mort, we get to see all of the ways he would have continually doted on her if she hadn't died. Instead of mocking her for being scared and apprehensive of this version of him, Rick builds her an apology waffle robot to say sorry. It's so rare that Rick admits that he's wrong. For example, his refusal to apologize to the Knight family cost his entire family their daytime routine for months. But for Diane, he'll craft an elaborate science and breakfast machine just to make her feel loved. We learn that the robot's arms are similar to the parts he used to build a law enforcement drone for the feds, which is actually how he met Diane in the first place. I gotta know the story behind this tidbit. Was Diane a federal agent? A fellow inventor? A criminal caught by Rick's drone? Given that her master's thesis was based on non-human intelligence, I'm leaning towards the idea that she was also some kind of scientist. But I am not ruling out the chance that she might also be on a government watch list. Another sign that Rick truly cares about her? He studied her thesis after she died and used his own knowledge to invent food tech that allows animals to speak. He even dresses up to impress her, donning a blazer, shaving, using cologne, and brushing his teeth. And I totally called it during my breakdown of Unmortricken. Diane was totally the badass adventurous one in their relationship before her untimely death. In that video, I theorized that Dee was the wild one and that past Rick wasn't nearly as exciting. He would have been perfectly happy as a husband, father, and hobby scientist if she hadn't died. I also theorized that Rick only became a risk taker when he felt he had nothing to lose, and that it's possible he started partying hard and going on dangerous missions because she was no longer there to do those things herself. In a way, I feel like Rick spent all those years drinking and inventing and adventuring because he wanted her spirit to live on in some way. And it looks like I was right, bitches! When Rick and Diane go toe-to-toe in a drinking contest on another planet, she asks, "When did you stop being a lightweight?" and even suggests that her death actually made Rick cooler. Well, let's be real. It was probably Rick's idea to head on down to Showbiz Pizza to watch an old Billy Bob animatronic play banjo with the Rockafire explosion. Considering that Showbiz merged with Chuck E. Cheese in our world, I'm wondering if its existence in the Fear Hole suggests that it's still around in the Parmesan universe. Sick of being in the hole and worried that Rick is dying from its effects, Morty decides to figure out his fear and face it once and for all. He assumes that his fear is not being accepted by his peers and goes on a cringe rampage of social suicide. He hands the school bully a list of 5 things he loves about Jessica, including the smell of her gym shoes, the way she says succulent, the fact that her name means foresight in Hebrew, and that her skin is so pretty it makes his wiener hurt. That's only 4 things though, so his classmates ridicule him. Except for Jessica, who stands in the back looking surprised and embarrassed for Morty. Although I'm sure that the writers chose Jessica's name long before writing Season 5's Mort Dinner Rick Andre, I really like the detail that her name means foresight, knowing that she becomes a literal time god after spending all that time in conscious interdimensional cryostasis. Next, Morty embarrasses himself by performing Richard Greenberg's play 3 Days of Rain, which tells the story of siblings who find their dead architect father's secret journal, taking them back through 30 years of their parents' love and lives. After discussing their separate universes' different series finales of the mid-2000s show Lost, Rick finally realizes that he's dying by choosing to stay with Diane, and decides to get naked with his grandson to help him conquer his fears. In doing so, however, Rick is forced to say goodbye to Diane forever. But the fear hole isn't done with them yet. Despite deciding together that they're done letting the hole's uncertainty prevent them from moving on, the hole tricks them into living several decades of normalcy inside. We see 26-year-old Morty again after his first appearance in Rick Morty Jack, and the U-tow truck makes its third appearance in the series. It was previously rented when Beth and Jerry tried to kick Rick out of their house at the end of the pilot episode, and again when Jerry moved out during the divorce in Season 3's Rickmancing the Stone. But when Morty gets jump scared after realizing he's turned into his father, he ends up right back in the hole. This time, although they fail once again, Rick encourages Morty to keep trying by telling him that he's irreplaceable. And that's when Morty truly understands what his greatest fear is. It's that his self-worth is dependent on someone who possibly thinks he's replaceable. I get it, dude. If my grandpa was handed a Whitney replacement voucher in Season 1, I'd be pretty skeptical too. Morty realizes that if he wants to get out of the hole, he needs to get past his worry that Rick will find something cooler than their family one day. Morty needs to be okay with knowing that even if Rick abandoned him, he'd still have value. He's more than Rick's sidekick. The fact that Rick didn't actually jump in the hole with him makes Morty feel dejected enough to break the whole spell over him. Even though we learn that the real reason Rick didn't follow Morty is just Rick knowing that conflicting fears could glitch out the whole fear matrix, I still think that there's a lot to be said about Rick considering trying the hole for himself at the very end, and ultimately walking away. For starters, I believe that Rick knows that if he went into that hole alone without a Morty to save him, he'd absolutely succumb to its life-siphoning powers, just like the fear simulation Rick. Rick knows he's not ready and not strong enough to face truly saying goodbye to Diane for good. So in this moment, even though he desperately wants a chance to see her again, he makes a similar choice as Fear Rick, to prioritize Morty over Diane. And this isn't one of those things where Morty is simply a tool to protect him. It's based on the deep, true love this duo has for each other. Morty was able to heal a part of Rick that was assumed to be long lost after the death of his wife. But while he couldn't find Diane at the bottom of a bottle or in the depths of an interdimensional portal, Rick found something equally special on countless adventures with his little buddy. Although Rick clearly misses his wife and spent several seasons tracking down the man who killed her in every universe, moving in with the Smith family ultimately saved him from utter self-annihilation. When evil Rick flips through Rick's memories in Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, most of his best ones are just hanging out with his grandson. Despite the fact that Rick's words and actions show otherwise, he knows that Morty gave him a new purpose and a new reason to live after Diane's death. When someone passes away, it's easy to lose yourself in grieving their memory. Rick was stuck in the depression, anger, and bargaining states of grief for a long time. But that's the deal with grief, man. Life moves on after loss. You'll never stop missing the person you lost, but you will find new people and things to love. Loving Morty now doesn't mean that Rick loves Diane any less, and it definitely doesn't mean that he'd be able to climb out of the hole on his own if presented with the chance to be with her. But it does mean that Rick values his grandson more than any living being in the multiverse. Although he definitely races back in there because he strongly considers jumping in to see Diane one more time, he makes the conscious choice to eat a grand slam with his living grandson instead of returning to the memory of his dead wife. While Diane may have initially pushed Rick out of his comfort zone, Rick now chooses to go on adventures with Morty because he loves spending time with him, not to escape his sadness. He's sort of been able to return to the person he once was over the last few seasons. Deep down, he's still the version of Rick who would rather eat ice cream with his family than do anything else, and Morty allows him to be that person in addition to an adventurer. Without Morty, Rick is self-destructive, self-loathing, and alone. With Morty by his side, Rick can do anything, including moving forward despite Diane's death. And that's why he hung Morty's photo so proudly on that Denny's bathroom wall. He admires the fact that his grandson faced what so few people can. I don't think we're fully done with Rick dealing with moving past Diane's death either. In some shape, whether it be coming back to this hole or through some other sci-fi bullshit, Rick will have to face Diane one last time before the series ends. Rick may be smart enough to know he's not ready to handle this emotional baggage currently, but his character arc will eventually have him facing this fear head on. Now that he knows that there's at least one place where he can give a true goodbye to Diane, but that it's seemingly a one-shot thing, Rick will have to find the right time to close that door for good by facing his fear inside the hole, or by finding real closure outside of it. The post-credits scene for this season showed that Mr. Poopy Butthole is on the opposite trajectory. Even though he definitely learned in how Poopy got his poop back that he too needs to move on from his wife, this stinger shows that he's ignoring those lessons. Apparently, he stole one of Rick's portal guns and is using it to replace one of his multiversal variants in order to get his family back. And look, dude, I get it. He saw his buddy basically replace his family and heal, so why shouldn't he? The big difference here is that Rick chose a family that Rick Prime had abandoned, while Poopy clearly just iced a version of himself to get what he wants. Judging by the look on Amy's face, she's definitely onto him. We don't really have a strong antagonist lined up for Season 8 solidified, so I wonder if this is a hint that Mr. Poopy Butthole will become a further foil to Rick and Morty next season. Rick's gonna be pissed that MBPH stole his portal fluid, and something tells me that he's gonna be the one to face the consequences when Amy discovers her husband's switcheroo. We might even see Poopy slay more of his variants, searching for a version of Amy that wants to be in love with him. These are just some of the details that I noticed in Fear No Mort, but I want to know what you guys think in the comments. Like and subscribe to Whitney Vision and stay tuned. I'm planning to release a breakdown of the other Rick and Morty episodes I missed this season in the new year. I'm Scarlet Wit, and you're watching Whitney Vision.